Joining us from Jerusalem, feminist activist and lawyer Keren Greenblatt, and joining me in studio, Ella Amest, spokesperson for NGO Ma'avarim, the Israeli trans community. Ladies, great to have you with us. We'll start with you, Keren, in Jerusalem. Your view is that this bill is an achievement and a long time coming. Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's both an achievement and it's also very controversial. And I think it's really important to understand both parts. First of all, it's a bill that has been in the works for about 15 years. And it's been first introduced by Zehava Galon of Meretz Party into parliament long before the Israeli society and Israeli parliament was prepared to understand the need for something like this, for adopting a model similar to the Swedish model that criminalizes purchasing sex services. And yet, on the other hand, there are also opposing voices within the feminist movement that really turn this pivotal and dramatic legislation into a really controversial policy change. You know, the first thing is, if you adopt a Swedish model, but without having the Swedish-like sort of vast social security safety net, it really changes the ability to change reality. Moreover, the original 200 million shekel budget that was supposed to come with this legislation was cut by more than half, which is the equivalent, it was supposed to be the equivalent of $50 million, and it's now about 90 million shekels, and it was also severed from the legislation itself and turned into a government decision, which makes it easier for the government to turn back on its promise to fund these things. And the reason the money is so important is because that's supposed to fund all of the social services and the support services for sex workers in order for them to rehabilitate, to have vocational training, to have housing solutions. And all of these things, if they're not funded, we're simply leaving them, in some cases, even to die.
Well, you covered the full gamut there, so I want to go in and we'll pick up on some of those points. But of course, joining me in studio is Ella. And while you pointed out, Keren, those controversies there, you also called it an achievement of sorts. And Ella, that's not your view. Talk us through that.
Not at all. Well, the thing I'm saying is, let's say sex work is a kitchen sink. You can reinstall the plumbing, have anyone who is there have access to rehabilitation, and the best rehabilitation there is. It doesn't help as much when you fill in this really small kitchen sink with a fire hose. The reality we live in a capitalist world, in a society where different classes have different opportunities, and someone, even after rehabilitation, may not have the same occupational options.
Right.
Let's say a trans Bedouin woman working in sex work, this might be her only option.
So you're here representing an NGO, Ma'avarim, which is the Israeli trans community. Talk us through, though, how this bill really affects the trans community.
Well, the trans community is one prime example, and I'm here to speak on behalf of it. It's really important for me to say that it's not just us. It's a lot of other people, and we just have access to public speakers. Specifically for the trans community, I can say that we have 64% of workplace discrimination, and 32% of us are unemployed. 30% of us are homeless, or have been homeless in their life. This is something that's unacceptable, and for some reason, some people resorting to sex work, which is not a good choice for many people. It's a really bad choice, if I may. But it might be the only choice, need to go through life-saving surgeries for sexual reassignment and find your place to live, because you can't find anyone to rent you.
So then, I suppose, what can be done now? If you're saying that with this bill of criminalising sex work is a matter sometimes of survival for the trans community, what do you plan to do from here?
Well, we plan to keep on the struggle. We're working for years now. I personally have been an trans activist for 3.5 years, and Ma'avarim has been operating for the last 5 years. And we're going to keep doing what we're doing, make sure that our community has the has access to resources and government plans, and whatever we can, but that's just us, and many other marginalized groups are going to need to do the same when sometimes they just can't.
Right. And Keren, back to you in Jerusalem, of course, the perspective is about looking at a particular story with many different views, and we've heard yours and, of course, from Ella's. What about for women or men that say that sex work is something that's a choice for them, it's something that they want to do?
You know, that's the neoliberal sort of approach that says that sex work is a matter of freedom of occupation. I really think that people who say that don't know enough about the circumstances that people who go into sex work experience in their lives. The average age of going into sex work can be 13, 14. This is not even the age of consent. So talking about freedom of occupation is really not relevant to the question of what we want as a society to, what kind of values we want as a society to promote and to allow. And I think the idea of criminalizing purchasing sex work really puts the fault on the right side of this issue or of this industry. And on the other hand, you know, we still have laws forbidding prostitution of others. We still have laws forbidding running brothels and things like that, which are also helpful. So I think when you think about the value system of our society, it's a good thing to draw a line somewhere and say this is not okay. But on the other hand, it's really, really important not to just draw this moral line that may come from more conservative approaches, but also at the same time look at what the sex industry is offering the most vulnerable and most marginalized parts of our society, and how we can really offer an alternative to make sure that we don't forget them behind. And I want to say that something really exciting is actually happening as a result of the protests against this law, which is that sex workers in Israel are starting to organize, which is something that we've seen in other countries happening as well. And it's something great. It means that the struggle for sex workers' rights and for their lives and for the proper conditions that we want as a society to offer them will be heard in their voices. And that's the most important thing.
And Ella, to you, of course, you're talking about the fact that there are many people that are led to sex work in the transgender community because of workplace discrimination, because of unemployment, that it isn't a choice. If that's the issue then, if workplace discrimination is the real issue leading people towards sex work, should that not be the focus, I suppose, of the protests? And what can the government do about that?
Well, my personal focus and the focus for Ma'avarim is helping people in need. People who go to sex work for their free will and freedom of occupation are, I think, free to choose what they want. I don't think that's the discussion we're in. I'm not interested in the discussion of whether that's good for them or not, and good for society or not. I want to ask how many people are going to get hurt. How many sex workers, trans or cis, are going to get hurt because clients are going to be more violent, going to be more suspicious, and going to stop coming to the street and invite them home when they can lock the door and hide the key.
Very briefly, just to close us out, Keren, what do you say to that? Do you think that this bill could, in fact, be counterproductive?
I mean, it could have some devastating short-term effects, and I think it's important to understand that, and it's important to thicken this legislation with the proper budgets to offer real alternatives to the most vulnerable people. And at the same time, I think it's worth continuing the discussion and making sure that all the voices are being heard, and that we're making progress in the right direction and not sort of forgetting who this could be harmful to.